All right, we'll kick it off here. I know people are continuing to trickle in, but in the interest of time, we'll kick it off. First, by way of reminder, this will be recorded, and we will make this recording available in the coming weeks. But thank you for joining us here today. This is the latest installment of NJCTA's Business Builder Series. Just by way of brief background, the New Jersey Cannabis Trade Association was founded in 2020 and is comprised of the state's permitted medical and adult use cannabis operators. The association is exclusively comprised of those who are licensed to cultivate, manufacture, and retail cannabis here in the state of New Jersey. The NJCTA's mission is to ensure that the legal cannabis marketplace is not only safe, accessible, and affordable, but also equitable, profitable, and just. To achieve this, the NJCTA strives to shape public awareness and encourage the implementation of thoughtful and responsible cannabis policy in New Jersey, and serves as a singular voice before the executive branch, legislature, regulator, media, and the public at large on the complex matters that affect our industry. I do promise I won't be reading from slides the entire time. But welcome to our latest installment of the Business Builder series hosted by the NJCTA. This is a set of programming designed to help aspiring social equity entrepreneurs learn from the experts that have become fully operational and learn those best efforts, if not how to avoid the pitfalls that inevitably happens to all operators associated with becoming a licensed and operational regulated cannabis business here in New Jersey. Today's installment, From Brick and Mortar to Click and Order, chronicling the process for launching and running a cannabis retail business here in New Jersey. Really excited about the panel we have here today. Some of my favorites from the NJCTA. First, we're joined by Todd Johnson, the Executive Director of the NJCTA, formerly the Executive Vice President and Head of New Jersey Operations for Justice Cannabis Co., and co-founder of Community Greenhouse, a Class 5 retail applicant looking to commence operations in the city of Newark. We're also joined by Evan Kolakowski, the Senior Director of Regulatory and Quality Assurance for TerrAscend. And TerrAscend, for those who know, owner and operator of the Apothecarium dispensaries here in New Jersey. And last but not least, Suzanne Nicholson, the founder and CEO of Holistic Solutions, a medical and adult use dispensary in Atco, New Jersey. And for myself, I'm Mike McQueenie, partner at Foley Hoag and general counsel of the New Jersey Cannabis Trade Association. For all those that have joined, any questions that pop up as we're going through, feel free to drop those questions in the chat, and we'll either answer them in real time, and either way, we'll save some time at the end for questions then. But please do ask questions as they pop up from folks. And again, we'll make this recording available for folks after the fact as well. Again, we have a wealth of knowledge here today, so my job is to just get out of the way as quickly as possible. But Todd, we'll start with you. And I know several years ago when you were in the process of opening the Block dispensary down in Ewing, we worked very closely during that time. But can you give folks a sense of your experience opening that dispensary, which was medical at the time, the ups and downs of doing so, some of the things you didn't expect, and overall what you learned as part of that process? And I would just kind of say, as a segue from our last Business Builder series that addressed navigating local approvals, if you can also give folks a sense of, obviously folks are very aware with the state application, but what are the other levels of government that folks might engage with as they prepare to open up their dispensary?
Sure thing. Thanks, Mike. Really happy to be here today, and thanks for all the attendees who are listening in. So yeah, Block Dispensary opened in Ewing in July of 2022. Funny, we got our cultivation permit back in April of 2020, and I was asked by a reporter from the New Jersey Cannabis Insider at the time, did I have a timeline for when the dispensary would open? And I remember telling her specifically, I really don't want to give you a timeline, but if you had to twist my arm, I'd tell you that we'd be open by August of 2020. And I was 2 years too early on that projection. There are a host of things that have to happen once to get your dispensary open. I'll start with building it. everybody talks about having a good relationship with the municipality that's hosting your cannabis business. So Ewing Township was absolutely fantastic. Mayor Bert Steinman, the city council, Chuck Latini, the planner, were all extremely helpful in developing that relationship. But when you're building a dispensary or a cultivation, who you really need to understand and work well with is the building department and the construction official. Those are the folks who are being the plans for build out are being submitted to them. They're reviewing them. They're getting back to you with comments and such. And so you really want to have a great team in place of your contractor, your architect, your civil engineers. You need to have that foundation in place because those are the folks that are going to help speed you through the permitting process at the building department and getting approval from the construction official to start work. The Ewing dispensary was hit with a number of issues. Probably the largest was like a mini disaster in August or September of 2021, when there were some very severe thunderstorms and even a tornado in the Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and Mercer County, New Jersey area. We were in the process of building the dispensary. There wasn't much in there, but it was just been demoed, the interior demo. And when this storm came through, the roof collapsed. And that really was a precursor to us deciding to demolish the entire building, build it up back from scratch. And we had to, again, work very closely with the building department to make sure that we did this in a very efficient way. There are also other agencies that come into play where we had to deal with the DEP because our building was in a floodplain. So when you are, if you're planning on opening a dispensary and you haven't yet gotten site control of your building, you need to know things like, is this building in a floodway, a floodplain? Will I have to get DEP approval for anything? Will I have to get Pinelands approval for anything if you're down in Ocean County? There are a number of agencies that have jurisdiction over these buildings, and you need to understand that when you're getting involved. To kind of hurry this up, so we ended up demolishing the building, built it back up from scratch. We thought we were going to be open in June of 2022. We were hiring staff March, April, May, getting their background checks done. You have to leave a ton of time to get background checks done, because when you bring people on board, if they don't have their actual CRC employee ATC card, they cannot be on site if you have already had product delivered to you. So if there is cannabis product on site, everybody has to be fully badged. So you want to start your training programs ideally with as many people badged as possible. But when you're going into those last few days of training and you're starting to take deliveries, you need to make sure that 100% of your team is badged. So give yourself some time. However, on the flip side of that, I think we hired about 16 people, or there were 16 of us that were ready to go. Everybody was in different stages of approval of those badges. And then the construction was finished, or so we thought. And when the building department, the subcode officials came out to do their inspections, their job is to find things that are wrong with the construction. And I will say that there's almost always something that needs to be adjusted. And so we thought we were going to open, I think it was like June 27th or something like that. We ended up having to make changes and get up to code on a number of things that pushed us out another 2 or 3 weeks. And this was already after we had done 2 weeks of training. So we decided at the time to pay our employees, because they had joined our company. They had left their previous jobs. We had to actually pay them to stay home for 2 weeks. So when I say that it's critical, especially for small operators that are, single state, or you're just getting up to speed, you need to make sure that timing is absolutely as close as you can get it, so that you're not paying 15 employees to stay at home for whatever amount of time in between the completion of construction and opening your doors. But certificate of occupancy is that final straw that you get from the building department that then translates to the CRC coming out to do their final inspection so that you can open. So certificate of occupancy is what you're gunning for, and you're going to need to have that before your field monitor for the CRC comes out and gives you the final thumbs up. And again, all that is coordinated with your local building department. So I guess I've been talking for a while. Maybe I'll end it there, and we can talk about other topics in those first few days of opening with some of the other questions that come out.
No, but Todd, you hit the nail on the head with timing, right? Like, not only from when do I hire staff, but expectations of your investors, expectations of your members, your co-owners, expectations of the public, right? You never want to be in a position of disappointing any of those folks, right? And so, that's always the first conversation that I know I'm having with clients after any approval. Like, hey, you've gotten your board approval. What are the next steps? Well, it's field monitor, it's inspections, it's timing, and then even after you have your final inspection, what's the real timing from there, right? Like, I think we had a question in the chat here. Typical time from CRC final inspection. That's another one where I'll say, I think what your field monitor will tell you is 30 days. And I think in reality, what most folks are seeing at this point, it's closer to 6 to 8 weeks, right? So understanding, as Todd said, all of those variables that will inevitably pop up, just so that you're setting the expectation for all those folks that matter to you, from your staff, your investors, your consumers, right? To avoid those issues of being disappointed, and just recognizing also, as Todd said, New Jersey is a regulatory state, right? One of my favorite lines is, it takes 2 years to get a supermarket built, and people like supermarkets, right? We're talking about a cannabis dispensary. You referenced Pinelands, you referenced DEP. If you're on a county road or a state highway, you're gonna implicate the county planning boards or the state Department of Transportation, right? Understanding those variables about what's going to end up increasing that timeline and having that clear line of sight coming out of that. Those are such great points. Turning to Evan. So Evan, your team has overseen a footprint of 3 dispensaries statewide, and have been operating dispensaries here in New Jersey over the course of the last several years, right? With those last several years under your belt now, how have things changed over time as you relate to operating a dispensary as the industry's evolved from medical only to adult use? And I think what's also kind of really fascinating about your experience is having opened up dispensaries or Class 5 retailers on the very first day of adult use sales in New Jersey. So I know that was a mouthful, but give us a sense of your experience through all those trials and travails.
Sure. Thanks, Mike. So New Jersey is certainly the fastest evolving state that I've worked with. The move from medical to adult use, by all means, was like opening the floodgates. So it was essential to be as organized as possible from the outset. We went from a concentrated population with rules and regulations that have been in place for almost a decade to a brand new set of guidelines and an immense increase in customer base. This created a scenario where coordination with the township, local law enforcement, the CRC, and intercompany departments was crucial. It was important to understand line control processes, confidence in testing our sales technology, and overall really preparing staff to be as comfortable as possible at the onset of customer intake. They were used to intaking patients only, and now it was a large amount of customers and patients combined. It was also very important to embrace the unexpected and accept that there was going to be bumps in the road along the way. That said, it was really important for us to lay out our critical path items and understand the timelines needed for important items. That way we can have avenues to work in parallel when delays present themselves. So with opening a business with such a large number of clientele, it can be super overwhelming and confusing, especially when things done correctly. And the regulatory authority just gave you the green light to open to the public, and issues can cause confusion with comparison to the rules. And it might feel like the spotlight's on you. So at this point, and a lot of things that we did, it was really important to understand that we could utilize our local law enforcement, the township, and the regulators as a resource. because the likelihood is that the same ones that you're dealing with, they want you to be just as successful as you do. They don't want to see any problems. They don't want to see you shut down for a day to reassess what you're doing. So we thought about it a lot, and everybody else should as well, that think of them like a free professional on making sure you're doing things right. If you run into an issue, if you have a concern, a question, anything at all, we certainly weren't, and no one else should ever feel afraid to reach out to those individuals, like your regulator, like somebody else, like the township. It was a really helpful tool for TerraSend, and it certainly should be utilized more often by any new licensee that is just about to open up, because it really does help out in a large portion, and it makes you more confident about making sure that it's okay to make mistakes, and they are going to occur. We certainly made plenty of them, and we worked right alongside with our regulators and the township, local law enforcement, anybody we utilized during that time frame, and it worked out to great benefit for us.
Yeah, and that's a great point, Evan, of that point of reaching out, right? I mean, I think, we're in a regulated industry. The goal here is compliance, and as long as you're continuing to have that conversation with the regulator, with law enforcement, with local officials, right? Show them that you are trying to do the right thing, and that's the goal. And so, I think the point there is, don't be afraid to ask that question. I mean, I would say that's half of the purpose of the New Jersey Cannabis Trade Association, is asking those very same questions to the other members, of saying, hey, look, our field monitor said this. Has this been your experience, right? We had this issue arise. Have you guys received any feedback on that, right? And more often than not, these issues have occurred previously. I mean, with the exception of what happened in April of 2022, when it was all happening for the first time. But certainly at this point, there's a lot of sample size there to show the issues that are certainly common to everybody, and figuring out what those common solutions are. So Evan, for you in particular, I think one of the most interesting things about your background is not only what you do with TerraSend and Apothecarium, but the fact that you actually started, I think, your career in cannabis, working in the very early days of the Department of Health Division of Medicinal Marijuana, right? Even seeing how that program evolved from the early days, and you'll have to remind me when you actually started, because we're talking really, really early days, and give us a sense of what it's been like for you, having been on both sides, right? Having been both the regulator and now an operator engaging with the regulator. Share a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, sure. So you're correct, Mike. I worked with the New Jersey Department of Health medicinal marijuana program from 2012 to 2016. Back then, it was a very small core group of individuals who were presented with a large task of growing a patient population. That included attaining qualifying patients and caregivers, educating them on the benefits to joining the program, building out those areas of the program itself, onboarding registered physicians, making them comfortable with the fact that they, at the time, were essentially putting their licenses on the line in a brand new industry that they might have not known a lot about, making them comfortable with registering patients and caregivers, and then providing training to law enforcement officials across the state. So they were well informed that there were going to be people purchasing cannabis across the state. So to our benefit, during that time frame, there was very few operators ready to go. So as we launched and as they launched, we got to work with them at a slow pace. So that kind of made it possible for us to establish the practices and policies as we worked with them, because there was no template provided for anybody. It was completely new. We didn't have neighboring states like we now do that might be changing their policies that we could adjust to. It was really all just kind of off the cuff, working with what we had and trying to work with the operators themselves. So like I said, East Coast cannabis wasn't established at that time. So education on technology, cultivation, extraction, seed to sale, those things just weren't there. So as the program grew, our neighbors like Pennsylvania, Maryland, Massachusetts, New York all started their programs up. And that really gave New Jersey the ability to kind of say, hey, this is a real thing. It's growing. It's big. It's not just us now. And it grew into what is now the CRC. So it went from the Department of Health to an administration, I believe, to now a commission that has a large staff who are able to segment into different departments. And even though there are, they have a lot of people and there's a lot of licenses opening up, it became a very progressive establishment, I think, from what it was. It was very hard to get information, let licensees know what the right thing was to do now. And I think the benefit that the CRC can provide new licenses now is that, like you said, right, even back in April of 2022, we really didn't know how things were going to pan out, right? It was the first time the regulations went from stop to go. And now we're looking at something where you have an established regulatory authority who's been around the block. You have these new licenses. You have licenses who've been opened up, and new ones that are opening up that can use each other's resources together based off of wholesale education and things like that. And then ultimately, what I can say, one thing that the CRC still does very great, one thing that we established back then, is we rather help than actually give violations and be an adversary, right? We want everybody to be successful. Nobody wants to write a fine and close anybody down. They want to see you be successful. So that was a very large portion of that as well, and it took hold and it's stuck, and it's something that they've held for quite some time, and it's very nice to see.
Yeah, I mean, again, I find that evolution fascinating, right? I mean, 2012, I don't even think there was a license open yet, right? So to be there from the infancy and to that point, right? I mean, there's that old phrase of building the plane as you fly it, right? And as long as everyone's kind of building together, both industry and the regulator, more often than not, the best outcomes do occur. So that, again, I find that history very fascinating. Let me switch to Suzanne. Suzanne, on top of being a tremendous cannabis executive, I think Holistic Solutions has a great distinction of being the first Black-owned dispensary to open here in New Jersey, certainly a state where social equity is so highly prized, rightfully so. Tell us what that experience has been like for you. And again, talking about history in a sense, right? I mean, I think one of our more famous application rounds is that 2019 RFA that Holistic Solutions comes out of. How long you were waiting for this goal of ultimately opening, but give us a sense of your experience overall, opening your dispensary and starting medically and going to adult use.
No, we are definitely excited about being a pioneer in opening for equity and minority operators here in the state. We have been moving forward on this path since around 2018. So we submitted, as you stated, our application in 2019. So as a minority female operator, the distinctions are great, having to raise capital for our company, as many of you are facing currently in this environment. Imagine 5 years ago, going into rooms where cannabis was not a friendly conversation, being a woman of color, asking for capital. And we are a startup company, meaning that I tell the story. I started my company on an iPhone 6 Plus, smoking a blunt one night in my bathroom, talking to my other half who's in finance. But the concept, we come from a background of cannabis. I come from a regulatory background as well. So in that, forming a company was extremely difficult. But the challenge was really building a team that would weather the storm. So in that, forming great partnerships, really, we believe was our success. My partner, Marissa, was able to open many doors. She had been in the business and industries for at least 20 plus years. So in that, she opened her network up to me. And as I tell many minority operators, if we get an opportunity to get in the room, like that's all it takes, because in that we have the opportunity to leverage and scale our companies. So in those rooms and networks, I was able to build relationships. I always say cannabis is a business of relationships and networks and collaborations. So being collaborative was key. Working with other 2019 RFA colleagues, we would meet on a weekly basis, just as you said, to talk about our experiences, to share resources, to cheer each other on. It wasn't competitive. We looked at the value sum of us all being successful and meeting our regulatory deadline. When we were open, there was no cure. It was a pass, fail, rejection. That was it. So in that, we also were given a regulatory deadline of being obligated to be open within a year. So you can imagine waiting 5 years and then being told, hey, now you have to be open and scale up your company, raise your capital. But more importantly, we were awarded on December 7th of 2021. We had to cure, meaning show financial assurity, probity, by January 6th. That was a 30-day window for many. So in that, the level of organization, detail, knowing your project, understanding your pro formas, but more importantly, having that team set in place, which is great legal counsel, great accountants, understanding your valuation, which is your opportunity of talking to investors to engage them in either raising debt or leveraging equity. Also looking at the landscape, looking at having to raise relationships with municipalities, not only having to work with investors, but also build out and work with regulatory bodies. In that, we believe we were successful. There were 30 awards in 2019. We were the third to open. And again, we had no money. I don't come from any wealth or background. So from a concept to scaling out, we believe that as many, if minority operators were given complete access to the capital that we need, that many more operators would be open today. We are excited about the new landscape that's in front of us because, again, in looking to scale on and being collaborative, you reach back and pull in. So Nawar Dispensary is going to be the second Black-owned dispensary opening this weekend in Maplewood. That's a great opportunity. And in that, working with them, meeting them a year when neither one of us had an opportunity, even being operable, of being able to pay for an exhibit booth, because again, scaling, building, construction, paying for professional services, those, oh my God, didn't understand we were on the Pinelands. Now we have to go in front of a whole different commission, go back in front of our planning board, paying for engineering services. Those things weren't budgeted in. So in looking at being flexible, being nimble, being able to look at the current forecast, but also too, building great networks, looking at other dispensaries, cultivators as partners, understanding your wholesale agreements, being able to leverage those conversations as minority operators and asking upfront for discounts, asking for supply agreements that are a little bit more favorable than just standard terms. And in all, many manufacturers may have that conversation of flexibility, but again, is knowing as relationships. And even if that first answer is no, we all didn't get where we are because we took no for an answer. We are resilient, persistent people. So in that, continue to go at it, build that relationship. I saw those smiles on the call. Again, in being successful, you have to understand the highs and lows, and that comes with really having a sustainable team, understanding your regulatory, and building that relationship.
And those are great points, right? And you know, I think of that you know, that question that used to be on the old medical applications, that was certainly on the 2019 application, as demonstrate sufficient amount of funds plus I think a reasonable contingency from there, right? And that was kind of tongue in cheek, I think, from the Division of Medicinal Marijuana, saying you're going to need more than you've budgeted for to handle these variables. Suzanne, I mean, I think the other, I mean, to your point, you were the third of the 2019 cohort to open up. And I believe, if I'm correct, you were in that kind of first cohort of that cohort to become expanded ATCs from there. And that timeline, I think, was interesting, right? Because, you know, as Evan talked about opening up in April of 22, you know, there was so much media attention, adult use cannabis is finally here. And then you're in that second phase, right? What was it like for you transitioning from medical only to adult use? What was that experience like? Was it more or less than you anticipated? And how was it operationally switching from one market to two markets, medical and adult use?
So we were privileged and thankful that the CRC decided that our application was worthy of conversion, because again, that's not a guarantee. That's something that you have to prove diligence, customer support, and patient support. But looking at the opportunity for conversion, that also went with our planning, understanding our consumer network. So from medical to adult use, it was completely different. As you said, it wasn't lines around the corner. So it was understanding your customer base, your specific trade area, being involved in your community, going to understand those basic door-to-door tactics, showing up at your 4th of July parade, being a visible presence, not waiting to open those doors and thinking that people are come, but really doing all those business of building those relationships well in advance. And in that, being a familiar face and also being collaborative. So for us, that was like getting in where we fit in and leading in service and helping people. So that was also being visible in any community project that was happening in our town, being visible in any philanthropic, but also looking to what cannabis dollars would it be able to benefit those communities and leaning into the education piece. Being collaborative and working with our law enforcement. We didn't wait just to introduce ourselves to the chief of police, is building those relationships to saying, hey, we're the dispensary across the street. Medical to adult use, also marketing. Marketing was very tricky in that we can't go out and do direct marketing based on current regulations. So in that, really sustaining a brand, really showing up authentically as who we are, which is holistic solutions. So I think of doing, creative ways and being able to brand our company, jumping into any collaborations, looking for any free network and resources, looking into that community corner pages of just basic advertisement, getting on any radios, collaborating with any other agencies or dispensaries, doing local activations. So again, it's not something I always say, just because you built it doesn't make people really want to come. You really need to show up in a way that people are interested in supporting you, supporting your brand. And I think that's the environment that you create, the authenticity and also the efficacy. We want to make sure that people have affordable, reliable, consistent flower. And in that, we provide a variety of price points. And also too, that comes with having good relationships.
And Suzanne, you just touched on such a great point. And I'd like to open it up for Todd and Evan's comment as well of that distinction, right? Of you're a retailer, but how do you get the consumers there, right? And I tell you what, with I'm assisting folks with applications in New York right now, where you got to do these sensitive use mapping. So I find myself Googling dispensaries in a certain area, right? And the most common search result that automatically populates is dispensaries near me, right? Because I think that's the natural inclination of consumers say, what's the closest dispensary from me? And how do you disrupt that thought process, right? And you gave a couple great examples of, giving them, the value for their dollar, doing those things like, being there for the 4th of July Day parades and things like that. I know a lot of, there are a lot of folks who have looked at these rules and said a lot of the regulations regarding advertising for dispensaries are too restrictive in that way, right? But Evan or Todd, either of you have any other thoughts about how do you expand that brand awareness for your dispensary, to project beyond just those folks who are Googling closest dispensary to me?
From my perspective, I think that especially in cannabis, where, as Suzanne mentioned, there are so many restrictions on marketing and advertising. And even in New Jersey, it's more restrictive than states like Pennsylvania, which allow advertising on billboards. You can't do that in New Jersey. So going back to the oldest marketing tactic of all time, I think, is word of mouth. And the way you have customers share by word of mouth that you are the place that they want to visit is by giving them a tremendous experience. And that experience is different. And you have to recognize that the experience is different for a variety of consumers. You have folks that are cannabis connoisseurs already. They know what they want, or they know what they're looking for. They may want to look at terpene levels. They may want to look at cannabinoid levels, and they may want to smell and see the strains and make their decisions and get in and out of your store in less than 5 minutes. And then you've also got consumers on the other end of the spectrum that either are first-time users or I've been really surprised at how many people may have tried, like the older generation may have tried cannabis back in the 60s or 70s, and then have not tried it, enjoyed it, but didn't partake because it was illegal. And now that it's legal, they are saying, okay, well, I remember I had a good time back then. Let me check it out. But that person is going to need a lot more hand holding when they come into your store for the first time. And you've got to have a team ready and trained. So learning and development is absolutely key to investing in your staff so that they can then give the consumer the experience that's going to make it memorable and get you that customer loyalty that you're looking for. That older person might want to ask question after question after question. They want to know what is cannabis like these days. There's been all kinds of propaganda or propagated by the government, and it's our job, it's our team's job, the frontline bud tenders that need to be armed with that education and that knowledge to help people understand, this is what this strain is. This is what this is. What is THC percentage? What is CBD? What is CBG? All of those go into what your consumer is looking for, and you need to identify who you're dealing with, because if you try and rush somebody out of your facility, not try to rush them, but they don't get the hand holding that they're looking for, they might have felt rushed when they leave and not have a great picture in their head of what that experience was like. Saying on the other hand, if things are going slowly and somebody wants to get in and out, then they're going to be like, oh, that place, they don't know what they're doing. It took too long. And so you've got to have the team trained up on all the little details and aspects of operations and knowledgeable so that they are able to identify, who am I talking to right now? How long do they want to spend with me? What are they looking for? How can I give them that experience that's going to, again, make it memorable, make them, you want them leaving saying, wow, that was fantastic. I'm going to tell my friends about this place, and I can't wait to come back.
Yes, that's another great point, Todd. And I think you both, Suzanne and Todd, kind of segued into another area that I wanted to cover, which is, when you're running and this is a question for anyone, when you're running your dispensaries, what do you find consumers are coming in for, right? Are they coming in looking for brands? Are they coming in looking for experience? Are they coming in looking for one product and they end up buying 4 others? What is the average consumer purchasing or looking for when they come to your dispensary?
So I would say that currently people are coming search for flower, and they're also coming in for quality of life and wellness concerns to either improve in some aspect and to treat an underlying condition that they may not be seeing a medical doctor, such as sleep. Individuals are also coming in to look at cannabis as an opioid replacement. I have a senior population of looking to replace cannabis in a way to use as a general sleep aid. They've been using melatonin and other things, Ambien, that really they've hit their tolerance level. I have individuals that are looking to supplement cannabis as just their workout and wellness routine. We have individuals using cannabis for their mental health awareness and mindfulness. So we have individuals looking to come in for cannabis for their pets because we carry a pet tincture. So I think consumers are extremely sophisticated. There are consumers that are coming in that generally remember that they like sativa. They may not recognize a brand. They want something that's going to make them feel melodic. And again, I totally agree with everybody on the call. That comes back to your, what we call our ambassador, your frontline staff, their ability to train and educate. I think individuals are looking for quick onset, long lasting duration, and they're looking for affordability and price point. They're looking to make sure that, they're spending their money and getting consistent, affordable, quality products at a fair price. So, and I think that currently in the market. People are looking for different curations, different offerings. And I think with the CRC opening up the regulations, we'll be able to see those things really appearing on the market. So I think traditionally, people are really coming in for some specific needs and then some general overall wellness.
I was gonna say, Evan, similar question for you, and especially as you've seen these stores open for several years, right? Like, have you seen any changes in the consumer that comes in or the products that they're looking for?
Oh, absolutely. So just as this industry evolves, so does the way to gather information. So, your customers nowadays, they have resources that they utilize online. You have Leafly, that's very popular. You have all of these online resources where you can find new and upcoming cultivars of cannabis. Customers know what the growers are growing. And just like Suzanne said, they come into the stores looking for these things because they know the effects, they know what the potency might be that they're looking for, and of course they're looking for the price points. So for a new cannabis business owner, it's always great to coordinate with your wholesalers because these people are going to be looking at these online. They're not just looking at your menus; they're looking at MJ Daily and any kind of criteria they can find online with what is good. Such as high times or whatnot. So, and a lot of the growers are cultivating things like this. So it's great to coordinate with your wholesalers to see if they can even let you into their building to walk you around, so your staff can get educated on, hey, this looks great, and that backs up to the confidence that your staff have to accentuate education on the products because they've been there, they've seen it, they can help educate people who are really looking for that little bit of extra help, or the person who might be the connoisseur who just comes in and wants to talk about cannabis. That's all they want to do because they know about it and they want to talk with somebody who's educated as well. So everything is molding together now that we're getting more mature in this business. And a lot of it comes from coordination between licenses and utilizing that technology together because like Suzanne and Todd said, people know what they want nowadays, and we're getting to an area where they do know what they want. So that coordination with our licenses and whatnot can really come in good strides when trying to pick out and get what people want on your shelves.
Those are great points. I like that point on coordinating with the wholesalers and the fact that they're doing their homework too, right? None of these licenses exist in a vacuum, and doing as much diligence. And Evan, even like you said, going to the cultivation facility, right? I mean, I think now the CRC is getting a little bit more liberal in terms of allowing jars that you can see and certainly smell and things like that. But until recently, when you have flower in opaque packaging, it's tough to really say to your consumer with a straight face, I know exactly what this looks like, right? So doing your homework and taking up those opportunities and again, credit to our cultivators in particular, who I think are receptive to those types of, or making sure that retailers know exactly what they're selling. So that's a great point. We've been talking a lot about, I'm sorry, Todd, go ahead.
Yeah, Evan made a great point to talk about what consumers want to see on your shelves. And Mike, I don't know if I'm preempting one of your future questions, but we haven't talked about technology yet. And I view technology as a tool by which you can help differentiate your offering. Understanding what sales trends are happening at your dispensary is absolutely paramount to your success. And your POS system is going to be the tool, not the only tool, but a very large tool that you should choose extremely wisely on which POS and POS point of sale system that you're going to use, because there are a variety of them out there, not many, but I think there's probably 4 or 5 main POS systems, and the way that each of them goes about allowing you to do data analytics and sales analytics is going to help you slice and dice the information that you gain from your customers and help you make those good decisions about what you should be purchasing more of and more frequently. Then it's just a critical tool. So, for those that are on the line that I'm sure most people are familiar with Dutchie being a very large player in the POS space, but there are other players, Kova, Blaze, FlowHub, Trees, those are the, I think, the 5 that I'm aware of that are probably owned, I don't know, 90+% of the market share. And each of them, it has their pimples and dimples, and you should get that each vendor to give you a kind of an overview and a tutorial about how they work and what their differentiating factors are, so that you can make the right decision for how you want to run your dispensary.
It's such a great point, Todd. And it's almost like similar to Suzanne's point, which is like this. This is more than just the if you build it, they will come, right? And this is more than we have cannabis in the vault, and so we'll always be good. It's about figuring out what your inventory looks like, what your demand looks like, and projecting that well in advance of your consumers actually buying it, and understanding, as Susanna also said earlier, understanding who your consumer is, what they're buying, how they're buying, and what volume they're buying, but knowing how to use that data, right? I mean, I was telling this story recently about we were talking about law firm billing, right? And they talk about BS in, BS out. And it's the same thing with the data that you're getting from your POS stations, right? If you don't understand the data that's coming in, then you're not going to have good decisions coming out, because you're not going to be understanding that flow. That's such a great point. Just on that point, anything else from Evan or Suzanne on that concept of wholesaling, right? Like, how do I know how much I should be buying forward looking? How do I assess that? It sounds like Dutchie is a great tool to do that, but anything else you guys use when you're making those determinations as a retailer?
So I think it's critical to understand your wholesale agreements and how your wholesalers sell their product. I might opt to take a chance on a wholesaler who has a SKU of a 25 rather than someone who has a SKU of 96. So depending on that product that I might not have tested within my market, I might not be that familiar with, but I might want to take a chance and offer to my patients or customers. So in understanding the value in expiration dates on finished manufacturing products have a different shelf life. You don't want to over purchase and be forced to have something that are set to expire. So I think understanding the cadence of your foot traffic, and that really comes back to really having good data analytics. I say from a perspective, conservative for me wins the race. In that, looking at talking to operators coming on, they're like, we're gonna like spend $400,000 like on our first order, and I'm like, what's the development of your foot traffic? Like, what does that equate to your purchasing? So in understanding your customer base, and if you're looking at pause and you don't really have an affirmative response, that means that maybe you shouldn't be spending $400,000 on your first order. Are you going to be able to move $400,000 within that 30-day supply agreement limit, or 15 days, depending on that wholesaler agreement? Again, these are business decisions that you have to execute and have that relationship with your customer. It is a relationship of synergy. So in that, there will be times, honestly, that you're like, oh my God, we've sold out of this product. We literally moved that product in one day and it's like sold out tomorrow. Great. We understand that our customers like that. That means we have to have a great relationship with our wholesaler to call and panic and say, hey, like, how soon can you get that delivery? Understanding your delivery cadence. You may be ordering, but your delivery cadence may not be 7 to 8 days now. Now you're living on whatever's in your vault. People shop with their eyes and appetite. So if you have a limited amount of offerings, they're going to be looking at a competitor. They're going to be looking at a sister agency or someone who else is offering that same amount of product. So I say that this is a sophisticated daily dance that you need to be fluid, but more importantly, understanding what you're offering, understanding the relationship of your product, and making sure that you're doing that cadence and dance. And that is a tightrope for all the operators on this call that we do on a daily basis.
I totally agree with that, Suzanne. It really is just like that. And it all comes down to even how the population of where your store is located, right? I mean, it could be, are you by the beach? So during the summer, people might not want to be rolling joints on the beach. So you might need to increase how many vape carts or pre-roll joints that you sell. And it all really comes from just being honest and making honest mistakes. I mean, things are going to sell out. You're going to learn. And then also being well informed on, again, I'll bring it up, where the industry is moving. New Jersey CRC just released new draft regulations for new edibles. So you're going to be seeing things like baked goods, jellies, jams, and drinks coming out. Well, there'll be operators that are already working on towards getting that released. And if you're in an area that might have 4 or 5 dispensaries in the nearby area, and you know that you can get your hands on it before, it might be something worth looking into and jumping on. And it really just comes from that touch and go of where we are, because this is really, even though we're a year or so into adult use, it's still brand new. So the public is still feeling it out. We're still feeling it out. And it really is something where all those things come into play.
That's a great point, Evan. I used to say that we're bottom of the first inning. I think we're now at top of the second, but it's still early in the game. With that in mind, and I know we're getting close to time here. That point of where the industry is going, and this is a question we'll love to hear the thoughts of everybody. What do the next 2 years look like in New Jersey? You know, and this is, we're not holding the answers. We're not holding anyone's answers against them 2 years from now. But what do we think New Jersey looks like, the cannabis industry looks like in New Jersey 2 years from now, and whether that's number of cultivators, number of retailers, what consumers might be looking for at that time? Open-ended question, but what does this industry look like 2 years from now? Whoever wants to take that first. Suzanne, go ahead.
So my wish list would be that more minority, women-owned, veteran-owned operators get an opportunity of becoming operational, and at the end of Q3, Q4, we see that happening. But to see that in a large-scale amount, that is something that I do see on the New Jersey forecast. I do see the opportunity for New Jersey to create another pilot out of the EDA. I think that was very successful. And to look to roll something equivalent out so more individuals can benefit from that. I do see that consumption lounges will be operational, and New Jersey becoming a key destination for people to choose to come here. I do see that in the next 2 years, we will see events, social planning, bed and breakfasts, food trucks, really a more diverse offering. New Jersey really becoming the bifidal place on the East Coast for individuals to go. And in that, I do see a growing of the industry and more opportunity for individuals that look like myself, who really authentically have been harmed by the war on drugs. And I do see New Jersey hopefully coming collaboratively of developing a formal state fund that's currently used to help operators develop and grow.
Great point, Suzanne. And I was talking to somebody about this recently. You know, New York made huge headlines for having a goal of a $200 million fund that has never come to fruition, or at least to this point hasn't come to fruition. Give EDA credit for rolling out the loans that they did, and there's certainly more to do there. But certainly credit where it's due with the EDA. Todd, go ahead.
Yeah, and on top of that, Mike, what you just said, I think I saw a headline that Maryland also has now a fund that's 40 million, if I saw that number correctly, that's going to help minority and women-owned cannabis companies, and probably veteran-owned as well. I don't remember exactly seeing that part, but yeah. So these states are really starting to put their wallet where their mouth is in terms of getting minority, social equity, women-owned businesses off the ground. And it's a critical piece of making this industry right the wrongs over the past, I don't know, 100 years. I'm a finance guy, and so over the next 2 years, I would love to see the rescheduling of cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3. I know that I never would have thought it was a controversial position until I saw LinkedIn after the Health and Human Services came out and said that they recommended to the DEA that they reschedule to Schedule 3. I was shocked at how many people thought that was not a good thing. But from a dispensary owner's perspective, and I'll say this to our attendees who are opening up dispensaries, find yourself a fantastic specialized cannabis accountant. This industry, if you are a standalone retailer, is designed to make you fail given the tax treatment of cannabis on your your taxes and the way that it's all put together. Rescheduling cannabis from Schedule 1 to Schedule 3 would remove 280E, which is the tax code that does not allow for retailers in particular to deduct normal business expenses. And if this rescheduling happens and that is removed, then these businesses will be treated as a normal business, and you will be able to be more profitable, or even profitable at all. I mean, I read another article that said like 24% of cannabis operators are profitable, and it's directly because of 280E. So if 280E is removed, I expect that profitability number to go from 24% probably to 80% or something like that. It is critical for, again, small operators to have 280E removed so that we can operate in a way that is comparable to other businesses. So I really hope that happens over the next year, maybe even 6 months. And then safer banking. The safer banking, which will allow banks and insurance companies to work with the cannabis industry more closely, that will cause an influx of banks and insurance companies into our space, which will then push down the rates that are currently being charged by the few financial institutions that are offering those services. Insurance, having a cannabis bank account, the costs are astronomical compared to having a normal business banking account. And it's because of the compliance that I'm not just saying the banks aren't just trying to screw over cannabis companies. It's that the amount of compliance that they have to go through on their side causes them to have to charge higher rates. But as we all know, more competition in the market means that rates for those services will come down and be more competitive. So those are two things that I would really like to see happen over the next year or two that will undoubtedly give the entire industry a boost, from the big players to the small players. But when we're talking about a small player, like myself, like Suzanne, it's absolutely critical to get cash flows up and not have a effective tax rate of anywhere close to 50, 60, 70%, which are some of these standalone retailers are currently subject to because of these laws that have been passed 40 years ago.
Great point, Todd. I completely agree. Rising tide lifts all ships. Evan, any last thoughts on what the industry looks like over the next 2 years?
So, I mean, I think Todd and Suzanne had excellent points, really, really good points, and I agree with all of them. Seeing where this has come from and where we are now, and the next 2 years, and licenses opening up successfully, offering new services, new brands, new cultivars, all those kind of things. It would be great to see the confidence in the New Jersey industry go towards everything being sold from licensed facilities and straying away from the illicit markets where product might be unsafe and pose dangers to people. So as it expands, it would be great to see that sway more in favor of all these new licenses coming on board.
Great points from everybody. And like I started off saying, no better panel to be talking about these issues than the three folks that we have here today. Thank you to everyone for joining. Really appreciate the engagement. Todd, go ahead.
Yeah, Mike, we just have one question in the chat. Are banks and credit unions in New Jersey offering bridge loans for purchasing inventory? If so, what are the rates? I just want to touch on that. Suzanne, you want to touch on that?
Well, you go first and I'll just finish.
Okay. I am not aware that banks and credit unions are offering bridge loans for inventory. What you probably will want to do is work in your initial purchases of inventory into your working capital numbers in your pro forma. And if you are going to be borrowing money to open your dispensary, having those costs that are part of not just construction and getting open, but also take you through opening day, so that is all rolled into into your borrowing, and you don't have to, scramble around trying to find 150, 200,000 to purchase your initial inventory for opening day. That's what I would suggest you would want to do. I don't believe banks and credit unions are offering bridge loans.
So I would concur. Currently, they are not. And in that as well, unless you have a hard collateral asset, such as a property, to be able to leverage many current banking institutions based on the federal restrictions of cannabis being on a Schedule I, aren't able to partake in regular established banking relationships, which leads you into others where you may go into a predatory state where individuals may be able to offer short-term hard terms for money to get inventory. I would be cautious of that. And just like Todd said, I would build that into your working capital needed, working with the sufficient consultant. That's where your relationships and getting your supply agreements is essential. I think that's critical. And if you have a working relationship or just a great introduction, being able to leverage that conversation would be most beneficial to you. But definitely build it into your working capital. Talk to your consultant. Many of us, again, reach out to your wholesaler, see what their supply terms are, and then I think those where you make your determinations on what you invest as your initial inventory buy.
Great points. We have here on the screen the our social media handles for the New Jersey Cannabis Trade Association, but as I think you'll find, certainly for those who know us, feel free to reach out with any other questions you have, and certainly feel free to reach out once you're licensed if you want to become members of the New Jersey Cannabis Trade Association. We're very much proud that we have license holders across the spectrum, all the way back from the first medical round to the 2018 round to the 2019 round, and now expanding even further with adult use licensed operators as well. This is such a tremendous time in the New Jersey industry, and great to be with everyone here today as certainly those in our audience prepare for that next vital step of getting open and operational. But thanks for joining us here today. And look forward to talking with everyone again soon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.